Just before we get started, let me make a quick recommendation. If you like history videos like we make here at Today I Found Out, you'll really like the podcast The History of England. It's about, well, the history of England, but more about it a little later in this episode. On September the 4th, 1927, a jolly goofy animated bunny named Oswald the Lucky Rabbit made his silver screen debut. In the 5-minute and 46-second short entitled Trolley Troubles, the earnest conductor drives his trolley full of rabbits through and under a variety of obstacles, including a stubborn cow, a seemingly insurmountable hill, and a panic-inducing brake failure. As his trolley speeds towards oblivion, the nervous Oswald takes off his own foot and kisses it for good luck because, well, it's a rabbit's foot. What made Oswald's debut notable wasn't the hijinks, but the man who created him. This was the first ever Walt Disney animation that was shown to the world, and it certainly wasn't his last. But how did Disney go from a lucky rabbit to a charming mouse? The answer isn't simple, and it wasn't necessarily by choice. In the video today, we're looking at how Walt Disney began with a bunny and ended up with a rodent. Through his teens, Disney was often contracted out to do animation work. By 1921, he'd made enough money to open his own studios at the age of 20. They were called Laugh-O-Gram Studios, and he based it in his hometown of Kansas City, Missouri. While it struggled, Disney was ambitious and daring, including convincing a publisher at the New Yorker to finance a new film featuring a live-action girl interacting with cartoons. This was called Alice in Wonderland. Unfortunately, before he could complete the film in Kansas City, Disney's company went bankrupt, so he packed up his bags and moved to Los Angeles. His brother joined him there, and they went into business together, forming Disney Brothers Studios. It was in Hollywood where they finished Alice in Wonderland and sold the concept, but not the original short. In 1927, Walt Disney signed a deal with Universal Studios to produce 26 animated shorts for $2,250, about $31,000 today, per short. However, Universal had a request, and that was to make sure that the title character was not a cat because, as the studio's head, Carl Lammel, said, there were too many cats on the market. Urged to get the cartoon done as quickly as possible, Disney and his team dove into work developing their new animated rabbit called Oswald. Contrary to popular belief, the name does not hold any real significance. According to legend, the name Oswald was picked out of a hat at a Universal staff meeting, which is also why it didn't follow the alliteration pattern of other animated characters like Bugs Bunny, Pink Panther, and later Disney's own Mickey Mouse. In just over 2 weeks, Disney presented the short cartoon Poor Papa, which featured a chubby, grumpy, and dazed Oswald dealing with way too many children. Because rabbits have a lot of babies. Universal did not mince their disappointment with it. They felt Oswald was too mean, too bumbling, and too dumpy. According to memos, they wanted Oswald to be young and snappy-looking with a monocle. As one Universal executive put it at the time, with the exception of Chaplin, important movie comedians are neat and dapper chaps. They also felt that the short was just a string of gags and there was no story. Disney agreed with most of the criticism, though he did think much of this was due to a short lead time. However, he wanted to make sure the character had personality and was distinct. As he told his staff, "I want our characters to be somebody. I don't want them to just be a drawing." Oswald's next story, Trolley Troubles, thrilled Universal, and they made it the first Oswald cartoon to hit the big screen. Critics and audiences alike also loved it, and often commented that the rabbit, and not the cat, was a natural comedic animal. For the next few years, the Disney Brothers and Universal rode Oswald's fame, making a good living while still enjoying the love of the audience. But in early 1928, it all came crashing down. For years, Disney had worked with a business partner called Charles Mintz, who had distributed and negotiated with Universal on his behalf. In recent years, Mintz had become disillusioned with Disney, believing that he was hard to work with and that, since he no longer animated the cartoons himself, was fast becoming unneeded. While Disney had created Oswald, he did it as part of a contract with Mintz and Universal, and due to the terms of the deal, Oswald was technically Universal's property and not Disney's. So, with his contract expiring and believing he was owed a pay increase, Disney approached Mintz and was flat out denied. He was even told that if he wanted to stay on, he'd need to take a pay cut. What's more, Mintz outlined his plan to hire Disney's animators away so Universal could seamlessly continue to work on Oswald. Essentially, Mintz was looking to cut out what he viewed as the useful middleman. Disney was furious, but he had little recourse except to tell Universal that they needed to fire Mintz or they'd lose him. Universal picked Mintz and continued to produce Oswald the Lucky Rabbit for years afterward, in several iterations. While Disney claimed that Oswald was stolen from him, that was not exactly the case. While what Mintz did wasn't exactly nice, especially to her friend and a longtime partner, Universal, they did own the rights to Oswald. Now, Disney probably didn't appreciate this at the time, but this whole ordeal would be a turning point for the better in his career. Within weeks, he was already tweaking the design for a new character he'd developed with an animator, Iwerks. To be frank, the new character didn't exactly look that much different from the old one. Sure, he was shorter, he had rounder ears and a tubbier stomach, but the work was clearly the rabbit being transformed to look more like a mouse. And this mouse, of course, was called Mortimer. Well, that's what he was called at first, then they decided to change his name to Mickey. The legend behind this is that Disney's wife, Lillian, thought the name Mortimer was too pompous. Whatever the case, Mickey would humbly make his big screen debut on only one screen in 1928 in a short piece called Plain Crazy. His next short, The Galloping Gaucho, was even less successful on its initial run, ultimately not running anywhere, with Disney failing to find a distributor. It was Disney's third Mickey Mouse effort, Steamboat Willie, which featured synchronized sound and premiered in November of 1928, that vaulted the mouse into stardom, with Variety magazine noting a few days after it premiered, "Not the first animated cartoon to be synchronized with sound effects, but the first to attract favorable attention. Steamboat Willie represents a high order of cartoon ingenuity, cleverly combined with sound effects." With Steamboat Willie a hit, the aforementioned two previous shorts were reproduced with synchronized sound, this time with Disney having no trouble finding a distributor to give them wide release. And, well, the rest is pretty much just the history of Disney. And now for a bonus fact. In 2006, nearly 80 years after Disney had lost Oswald, the doofy rabbit returned home. According to the New York Times, then president of the Walt Disney Company, Robert A. Iger, had made a promise to Walt's daughter Diane that he would bring Oswald back into the company. As it just so happens, the legendary sports announcer Al Michaels was on the outs with the Disney-owned ESPN. So Iger struck a deal with Universal. Give us Oswald back and Michaels can sign with NBC to do sports. And NBC agreed. So if you like this sort of history video, I really think you'll enjoy the podcast, The History of England. It's the story of England from the day the Romans shut the door on their way out. The host David does a great job of detailing some of the most dramatic events from history in a balanced way. He also explores all the extra depth stuff that we love here at Today I Found Out, and if you like this channel, you'll like the extra depth that David goes into. You can find The History of England wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please find a link in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching.